And we are live. Welcome YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and my favorite, LinkedIn. Welcome to the Rise and Grind show where HR influencers go to get inspired. I'm your co-host, the HR influencer, Duncan Harrison, and I'm here with my main man. What's cooler than being cool? My other co-host live from Qatar. Tell them who you are.
My name is Jay Tyler, Justin J. Tyler from 1984. But here's the thing, without further ado, Duncan, let's do what we came here to do. You dig?
Let's go.
All right.
So we have an awesome esteemed panel for you today of knowledgeable HR professionals. And so I don't want to hold you up because I want to get straight into the topic
Sure.
today of why your resume sucks and what you can do to fix it. If you're watching this, go on Facebook, go on YouTube, go on your Instagram, share this because somebody that you know needs to hear this. I know you're looking at it like somebody you know need to hear this. And so let me go ahead and introduce the panel. And as I introduce you, please just tell them who you are, where you're from, how you became a resume writer, or and why. I guess why did you become a resume writer? So I'm going to start to my right on the screen with Miss Pamela Shand.
Hi, everybody. My name is Pamela Shand, and I'm a career coach. I'm the founder of Offer Stage Consulting, and I'm also the author of How to Hire. I created Offer Stage because I really just wanted to bring about harmony in the hiring process. I come from a recruiting background, and I've seen people who struggle with their job searches. I've seen people who submit resumes for jobs and get absolutely nowhere, and they get more and more frustrated. I've seen people who, out of desperation, will apply to the wrong jobs over and over. And I've often taken it upon myself to say, listen, you didn't get this job, but I have another job that may be a great fit for you. So after a while, the light bulb goes off, right? And I started to literally take what I was learning from the corporate recruitment world and helping anyone who was around me. And that turned into Offer Stage Consulting. Even the name comes from the offer stage in the hiring process. So that's what I really want to do with job seekers. And then obviously with employers, I mean, they're not the only ones, job seekers are the only ones struggling in the process. Employers are struggling as well. So we cater to both sides, again, to bring that harmony.
Oh, very nice, very nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you for being with us, for being with us,
having me.
being here with us today. Thank you. Oh, yes. And so let me go, Miss Gabrielle Thomas, please.
Sure. Hi. Yes. Thank you also for having me today. My name is Gabrielle Thomas, and I am a resume writer and a career coach as well. Just a little background: for several years, I was actually in the high school phase. I was working with high school students as a college and career coach, specifically students who wanted to get into the most selective universities. And then I transitioned into Penn, and I now work at the Wharton School working with MBA alumni. And it was during that transition that I realized I really needed to up my game when giving resume advice. It's a bit different of a demographic. And so I went and I got my resume writing certification. So for the past 2 or 3 years or so, I've been working directly with MBA alumni and helping them with that. But then I also have my own independent career coaching firm on the side.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Well, thank you for being here with us today.
Happy to be here.
All right. And Miss Jacqueline Gilbert, please.
I am Jacqueline Gilbert. I'm the founder and CEO of JW Warren LLC. We are actually celebrating 7 years in business this week. So
Congrats.
very excited about doing that. Thank you.
Very nice.
JW Warren LLC, we provide resume services, career advisement, professional development workshops, HR consulting. HR is my background. I'm also the interim HR executive VP of HR for a nonprofit in Paterson, New Jersey. So why did I start writing resumes? Because I have seen some really, really bad resumes over the years. People really don't understand that the resume represents them and what it should look like. So they would ask me on the side, can you just look at my resume? Can you just tweak it a little bit? And I've been doing it for so many years that I said, why don't I just make it a business? Why don't I actually get money for this? So 7 years ago, that was my only service. And now I have over 10 services that I offer.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's wonderful. Well, listen, I am glad to have you here tonight. So let's just get right into it. right? So, Justin will probably tell you that, and I say this all the time, I am not a fan of the resume. I think, the resume brings too many biases. When we talk about the future of work, I am in favor of just, getting rid of the resume. If we can make that thing explode and find something new, I would actually do that. But we are still in this era where a resume is necessary. So please, if you can, just tell me about what are some of the most challenging aspects of what you do as a resume writer. And anybody can take it.
Yeah, I can jump in first. So one thing that can be challenging if we as resume writers don't think to ask for it is kind of understanding a clear picture of someone's impact and the success stories that they have, which you might not be able to glean from their original resume, depending on, how they had help constructing it. So usually someone's original resume might not have enough detail to really get a sense of who they are in the workplace. And so I tend to ask them to also keep track of any performance reviews or feedback from their bosses, or any times they've been recognized for a job well done, because this will help me do my job better. Otherwise, we have to just go off of that one document. And I think the better and more holistic a picture we get, the more effective we can be.
Oh, wonderful.
I think that's really good, Gabrielle. And just to kind of piggyback on that, what I also do with my clients is, for the resume writing clients, I always do what I call the deeper dive interview conversation, where I literally go through their background as if they're in an interview. And I dig for that information. I dig for the details. I dig for the measurable results, because one of the biggest challenges is, really understanding, number one, their voice, because you're not just writing one resume for every single client. Every resume is individual, has to fit the individual. So understanding their voice and understanding their unique value proposition, and then being able to craft a resume that literally sells that to an employer.
I would agree with both of you. In addition to that, I would say a big challenge is telling my clients that you don't need to write every responsibility on your job, on your resume, from your job. They get very anxious if they miss something. They want to always have, well, I forgot, I want to add this, I did that. And I try to explain to them that as great of experience you have with the responsibilities that you've done, you don't have to list it. You need to save some room for talking points for an interview. So I always recommend, let's figure out what these different responsibilities are and what skill set did you gain from them, and make sure that your skill set is represented on your resume.
And another thing that actually reminded me of another point, Jacqueline, thank you for reminding me of this. When your resume is, I'll say, overly wordy, it sends the wrong message about your ability to communicate.
Very true.
And remember that you want your resume to kind of whet the appetite of the reader. Exactly. You want them to see it and think, oh, Jacqueline's awesome. Look at this resume. I can't wait to meet with her. Right. You don't want to overwhelm them. You want to kind of tease them a little bit. And so if you're giving it all away, it's like, where's the excitement? Come on. You want them to be excited about meeting with you and rush to pick up the phone and call you. So, yeah, you definitely want to think about the messages that it sends.
Very true.
And if I could jump in for a second, I want to piggyback on what Pamela said. You said two things. One about the deeper dive in terms of getting into what the results are, what your measurable results are, what you have done, what you have achieved. Yes. And when I talk to my clients, I talk to them about using your resume as a jumping point for your interview responses.
Yes.
Right. Because, for example, as we talked about with Jacqueline said, let's not list all the responsibilities. Of course, if they're bringing you in, they pretty much know your responsibilities if you're in the same industry.
Right.
So let's talk about what you have achieved instead of what you have done. All right. And what you do. And so when we go into that, I talked to them about the PAR method or the STAR method. So, for example, the PAR is the problem, action, result. So if you can state your problem, state the action steps that you have taken to solve that problem, and then also state the positive results, that's also interview worthy as well, because that's a behavioral based, competency based, example of how you could use that in a actual interview. So let's look at things that we can use that can, prompt your mind to also explain that a little bit deeper within the conversation on the phone or in person with a recruiter. So something to think about. I want to just, double back off of what you said, Pamela, on that.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let me give you the scenario. So I had a friend who called me and they saw that we were doing the show, and he said, "Well, what if my resume doesn't suck?" Right? And my response was, "Well, how do you know that?" And so, and they said to me, they said, "Well, I had another friend who paid a resume writer $200 to do their resume, and that person gave me their template, and so now I just use their template."
Yes.
So are there,
Careful with that.
right? Are there some problems with that? Is that because a lot of times, and I see this a lot,
Yes.
somebody will say, "Oh, well, my cousin has a resume that looks good. I'm
Yeah.
just going to ask that person to do it and use that template." What is the problem with that?
So the template is important, yes, but it's the content on the template. So you can't mirror what someone else's verbiage says on the resume. It doesn't reflect your experience. So having a good template to catch the eye of the employer is definitely important. But are they going to be able to make sure that they're using the right words that will keep that attention of the employer?
Absolutely. And remember that. I'm sorry, but I thought you were done. Sorry, but
No, it's okay.
the strongest resumes are always targeted to the job. Always.
Yes.
And so even if, we're using, let's say, a resume for Gabrielle, and she's got one awesome resume, professionally crafted and all of that, if she's applying to 2 different jobs, she would have to alter the verbiage to cater to those jobs. So the template is really only going to get you so far.
Right.
The template's like, the first date. The verbiage is like the relationship. You got to get beyond that. Like,
Yeah. And
talk to him, Pamela. Talk to him.
And to echo that statement, I don't know, but I can't speak for everybody, but I personally find it really hard to write a resume for myself, to step out of my own perspective.
Yes.
And it's also really hard for me to pinpoint like the common themes throughout my work experience. Like I personally have a career coach, and I was looking at her and I was saying, listen, I went from nonprofits and now I'm in higher ed. To me, it looks like I'm all over the place. And my career coach was like, well, wait a second here. You seem to have this common theme of always helping people get to the next step, whether that's for college, whether that's for a career. And that's a transferable skill that you can like to comment on in interviews. And I definitely would not have realized that if I didn't have somebody come in and have a fresh perspective on this and be able to tell me what the value add is that I'm bringing to the table.
Gabrielle, I want to do a timeout because I want to make sure this is a perfect segue into the question I have. You might read my mind or something. You got a special skill. I don't know what you did right there. It's pretty cool though. Really cool. So I talk about this all the time with people because sometimes people say, I don't have enough money to invest in a resume writer. I don't have enough money to invest in a career coach. So when Gabrielle was talking about, hey, I even have a career coach, right? I have somebody I go to, even though I know how to write resumes. I know how to analyze a resume. So state your case right now, everyone, for the reason why someone should invest in themselves in order to invest in a resume writer or a career coach.
I'll let the others go ahead.
Because this is not a temporary investment. This is long-term. This can set you up for something bigger than you can imagine. So if you have that investment, if you make sure that you prioritize your professional career, then you're going to continue to move forward. You usually don't go backwards when you invest in yourself in your professional career. So it's a stepping stone. You have to start somewhere, and why not invest in it now so that you can see something great later on? That's my opinion.
It's great. For me, I would say, I would encourage someone to think about where they've been in their job search and all the hurdles that they've struggled to get past. Gabrielle made an excellent point a moment ago, which said it's hard to sell yourself. That's one of the main reasons why someone would seek out another professional, is because it's hard for me to sell myself. Oftentimes people look at their own experiences and they say, oh, that wasn't a big deal. And I go, no, that was a huge deal. You added a lot of value with that project, and they don't see it. So being able to have someone outside of yourself look at what you've done, ask you those really important questions, and get that information out of you, and then create something, especially if your career coach or your resume writer has an HR background, has a recruiter's background. They have that insider information they're behind that wall that you're trying to get through. So they can use that insider information to give you a leg up on your competition. And I believe the information is what the average person, when they get like an increase after working with a resume writer, like a 30% increase to their base salary or something. So that's, and if you think about, even if you're hiring an expensive resume writer, 30% added to your base salary, the ROI on that is incredible. So I usually share that with clients and they go, okay, that works. That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. To echo that too. I mean, many of us have already dropped thousands of dollars on our education alone, whether it's a real degree or it's a certification. Like what I don't understand, what seems like a waste to me, if we've already put in this much effort to get to the next stage, investing in helping somebody help you with your career makes a lot of sense to me. I know I've personally benefited from it, especially as we move into a market that's dominated by who to get you into those places. I think that's another value add too that resume writers and career coaches bring.
Certainly.
Wow.
Right.
So, if I can, let me ask this question. So, I want to talk about the resume in itself and the formatting of the resume. Actually, and let me. I want people to hear me on this one because I see this all the time. So I'm looking in the camera, so I'm talking to you. So when I see resumes, a lot of times people put an objective, and I read it all the time. Like the first line of the objective is, I want to do something that's going to have a big impact on society. And it's like, well, wow, that's like really general. So like, you could do that at McDonald's, yeah, exactly. Serving me hot fries, you're having an impact on me. Right. And so just break down how important the objective is, if it's necessary, and then go through really the different components of the resume that people have to have on their resume. And then actually also, I want you to talk about a little bit too about making sure that you're pulling out the details and not using those boilerplate sentences that you can get off Indeed or any other place that to help you describe, what you've done, with your previous employers.
An objective for me is a no, a big no.
Correct.
I prefer a striking professional summary. I say striking because the use of your words in your professional summary sets the tone for your whole resume. It should describe you, and it should describe where you're going without the standard I'm seeking to further my, professional career, X, Y, and Z, the standard language that you read in an objective. So that's why it's very important to have a striking professional summary. 3 to 4 sentences that can briefly describe you and capture just an overview of who you are and where you're trying to go quickly, and entice the future employer to want to continue to read it.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Also, I found that objectives, they have 2 negative impacts on the job seeker. Number one, they pigeonhole you. A hiring manager reads an objective and says, oh, well, Duncan wanted this role. I don't have anything like this open. Maybe I should interview him.
Absolutely.
So that you kind of shoot yourself in the foot there. Number 2, they're dated. So I guess they do 3 bad things. And number 3, they fail to do what a resume is supposed to do. A resume is supposed to market you. It's supposed to communicate your value. How does telling me what you want to do communicate your value? The striking, career summary or executive summary that Jacqueline talked about is the perfect way to start off your resume. You want to make sure that you're grabbing their attention right away. I would also recommend that you, especially if you have like transferable skills, like Gabrielle talked about, highlight those transferable skills. And I think right now that's really important because a lot of entire industries are suffering. And there are a lot of people who, while they love their industry, they're forced to look into another one because maybe they worked in hotels their whole life. And now who knows when they're going to be able to get back to work, or a restaurant that's not, hasn't reopened yet. So now they've got to take what they know and apply it somewhere new. So being able to highlight those transferable skills as well would be really important for someone in that position.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point. Especially, what Pamela was saying with recruiters, they're only going to glance at the top third of your resume, especially if there's a wide applicant pool. So that top third has to be really tight, and it has to be very closely aligned to the position that you're applying to. Even if you don't think it necessarily describes what you've done in the past, it's very likely you're capable of doing whatever that job description says. So have a core competencies section there that aligns with the job description. Add some of those key skills. And like Pamela was saying, the transferable skill sets there that really align with whatever the role is that you're applying to. But really focus on tailoring that top third each and every time. Don't send it out bulk to a whole bunch of different positions, because recruiters are looking specifically at that piece of your resume.
And applicant tracking systems too.
Yes, they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say this again, Gabrielle. I don't know if you're living in my head or not. I really don't know. But we're about to piggyback off you again, right? What you just said. So, what I look at in terms of clients when I talk to them is that your resume is a conversation. If you look at how it really flows, because at the top is your name and your introduction in terms of like, you know, who you are, where you're from, right? When you ask somebody that question, they ask you that question. But then someone's going to know, like, okay, what do you do? Like, you know, who are you? That's your professional summary. That's how you grab their attention. So if you have 30 seconds with the CEO of a company that you really want to work for, that's your elevator pitch on paper.
Right.
That's really what it is.
It is.
So you're talking about your years of experience. You're giving them some soft skills. You're giving them some technical skills that apply for the job, that apply with the job that you're seeking. You're also giving them your largest achievement relevant to that position. Let them call you. They see this big achievement that relevant to your position. They're dreaming about how you will, you know, work in their company. They're predicting your success already. And so what you want to do with the elevator pitch is get them excited. Like, I got to call Justin before another employer calls him, because I see in these big achievements. He's telling me what he's going to do for my company. I see the soft skills. I see the technical skills and the years of experience. I'm dreaming about him right now. I need to call him, right? And so that's what you want to do in an elevator pitch, AKA professional summary, AKA resume, summary of qualifications, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
That's what that is for me when I look at, you know, working with my clients on getting that together. And you're right, 1/3. This is precious real estate. That's the most precious real estate you have in your resume. The first top third is going to give them that impetus to go into the rest of the resume and read that with enthusiasm. So that's all I want to add on that one.
Just to comment on that, because I think it's a great point. I've found, and I don't know about the rest of you, that a lot of my clients accidentally humble themselves. They have imposter syndrome about what they're capable of. And so they restrict that 1/3 to just what they know they're good at versus what they have the potential to be. And that's really what's going to sell you, especially if it's a vertical jump. If you're trying to get a promotion, you have to sell yourself for who you want to be. And so try to remove that imposter syndrome when you're looking at your resume.
And I think Pamela kind of touched on that earlier. They sell themselves short because they don't interpret what they've done the way that we may interpret it for them. So that is our job to do that, whether you are coaching them or just writing their resume. And when you're writing your resume, you are coaching them.
You are. You really are.
Interesting. All right.
Wow.
Well, yeah, Dunk, you had a question, or
I have a lot of questions, because once again, you know, the resume for me is just something else. So, you know, hiring managers, right? So I've you know, sat in the seat. You know, you post a position, you may get 500 resumes. Sometimes we require cover letters as well to kind of help sift through, because what I've also noticed too, especially with this one-click generation, when you talk about like Indeed and things, you know, if we require a cover letter, you know, they'll post their resume and then they'll post their resume again and the cover letter just to get through the process. So if I am, you know, a candidate looking for a position, how do I get my resume to the top of the pile? Like, what tips and tricks do I need, you know, for my resume to get it noticed by someone?
Matching it to that job posting as much as you can. Applicant tracking system is the first thing that most employers who can afford it, they use. And if you don't have those keywords that match their job posting, forget about it. It's next, you know, you get a rejection letter immediately. So definitely taking the time to go through what it is that is on there, whether it is a responsibility that they're saying is part of the job, but you've done something similar to that in your past experience. Mirror some of that information to make sure that if it's obviously fitting to what you've done, that you could speak about it. You have to match some of the verbiage that is on that, because if, like I said, you will immediately get a rejection letter. There are thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people that are unemployed, millions, really. So everybody is applying for jobs that they may not even be qualified for. But if they have more of a resume that matches what the job description is asking for, they may move along the process quicker than you if you didn't do your due diligence.
I would also, I think that's fantastic. And I would also add to that to leverage tools like LinkedIn to your benefit. Where the job market right now more than ever is so relationship driven that, you, even if your resume sometimes isn't perfect, you still might be able to kind of get at least an introductory interview based on a relationship that you've built. So I would recommend someone, especially if you found a job posting on LinkedIn, kind of scroll down a little bit, see if you can find who posted the job, see if you can find out who the recruiter is, the hiring manager, send them an email, reach out, let them know that you're interested in the role. LinkedIn also provides a tool where you can kind of go through your profile and make sure that your profile has those keywords as well, which allows someone who's searching for talent like you to find you and reach out to you. And then you can also, do your research that way. So I would recommend someone, not applying, of course, make sure that your application is targeted to the job. Yes. But take it a step further and even reach out to someone and say, hey, I applied to this role. I just want you to know that I'm interested. Use that email to sell yourself even more, and kind of nudge your way to the front of the line.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, your resume should be a reflection of who you are, but it shouldn't be doing all of the hard work for you. I think it's really important to lay that groundwork ahead of time before you apply. Like Pamela was saying, do due diligence, network, get to actually, beyond even just having a superficial level of getting to know somebody, try to have a coffee chat or a virtual one in today's times if you can. And if you're concerned that you don't know how to network strong enough yet, that's what career coaching's for. We can help you kind of set up these preliminary meetings and really develop a strong enough relationship with these hiring managers that your name comes up first at the list when they're looking through these pools and they say, oh yeah, this person's hungry. This person really wants this job because they've been laying this groundwork for weeks before they even applied.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big proponent of beating the ATSs whenever you can. If you don't have to go through it or touch it, let's do that. So you all are right and all are correct on, making sure you develop these relationships in order to bypass the ATS, get the referral, get that first introductory interview or phone interview, and you take it away from there. That's because the ATS is funny. If you don't spell the word the right way, or the same way as the job description, or you don't add that, the same way that the acronym was spelled, and it's really tricky. Plus, there's some old, antiquated ones versus the new ones. Are they looking at your PDF, or can they accept PDFs or not? Like,
Right.
So if you could bypass ATS, that's the best bet.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So Pamela actually brought up, I think it was Pamela actually brought up LinkedIn, right? So Shiam Shapiro actually posted a question today on LinkedIn, and he talked about putting your picture on your resume, right? And I guess where some professional resume writers will say that's a no-no. Some may say that's okay, but if we're going to LinkedIn and they're going to have your picture anyway, does it really make a difference whether your picture is on your resume or
Good
not?
question.
And I will just start off by saying, I'm not in favor of having the picture on the resume because for me, it just creates another bias. But once again, I am not really a big proponent of the resume, but please go ahead.
I don't think it's necessary at all. To the point that you just made, Duncan, we all see someone's profile photo on your LinkedIn profile. And there's a point that you made earlier, Jay, about your resume being, precious real estate. That the space that photo takes up, you could use to fill with content that's going to help that you pass the ATS. Don't waste resume space.
Correct.
Wow.
Now, I know when I worked in hospitality years ago, a lot of bartenders and restaurant servers and greeters, they would have their photo on their resume. I think that's more appropriate. I think you also do have to think about the nature of the business and what type of position they're applying to.
I agree.
For any office professional, I would not recommend it at all. Just make sure that you have a appropriate headshot on your LinkedIn profile, and that's it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I agree with what both of these ladies said. I don't think I have too much to add on this. I mean, there's no hard and fast rule. There's no industry standard, which is so funny with resume writing. It really is kind of industry and function specific.
Right.
I don't think it's anything that's necessary. No recruiter's going, oh, but I can't see their face on their resume. So I think
Right.
I will say this though. I'm actually, I don't know if people know, some people know, but I work and live in Qatar, in Doha, Qatar. And so
I'm sorry, Justin, please tell them where exactly, just, for people that don't know, where is it located? Where exactly is that?
Okay, well, for it to be one of the richest countries in the world, I will explain. But it's like where Saudi Arabia is. If you know what Saudi Arabia is on a map, it's that thumb-like country right on top of Saudi Arabia.
And how far away from... Come on, Justin. Why don't we go through this every show?
I know.
Just say it. I don't understand.
I know. So as I talk to my niece and nephew about why I don't visit them often, it's because of COVID, and it's about 7,000 miles away. So that's two reasons why I don't come often. But in terms of out here, when I do resumes for clients, I am a certified professional resume writer, by the way. That's why I jump in a lot in this conversation. But it's really, out here, that's a norm. I mean, you'll see some funny things out here. You'll see pictures on the resume. That's a standard out here in the Middle East. It's a standard. It's a standard to put if you're married or not.
Yep. Your age, your social.
Right.
Google
your health.
Very different.
Yeah, your health standing. They want to see that on there. They want to see a CV. So they don't want a truncated, parsed version of your career. They want to see everything. What you've been doing since 1998. When you graduated, right? So this is very different. So I will say also internationally, globally, based on where you are, the picture has more of a standard versus where we are in the West, where we say, no, we don't want the picture unless it's on a certain industry or certain job that we're looking for. So I want to say that as well. If you're looking for international jobs, they might ask you for a picture. Don't be freaked out by that. They want to see what you look like. So.
Yes, I've seen that a lot. When I recruiting globally, you'd see resumes with social security numbers, marital status, age, birthdays, a lot of information that if you're an American HR professional, we would not include on a resume. So I remember having to, kind of edit quite a few resumes that I would get from international candidates because I would think, we can't share this with the business. So absolutely, you're right about that.
So can I ask a question? I want to
please go right ahead. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for your graciousness, my friend. Thank you so much.
No problem. I'll take a coffee break.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to talk about kind of what's going on now. Maybe break a little bit off from the resume, and I want to get a scope of what's happening. So
I'm sorry. Wait, I just got one more resume question. Can I get in before, because it actually it's perfect to what you talk about the CVs. Right. So I'm a person that if I give you my resume, I want everything on there because I feel like I've had some dope experiences that I want to talk about during the interview. So I may give you a 25-page resume that has everything from my current job to when I got my first babysitting job, because I just want you to know how great of a babysitter, newspaper boy that I was, right? And how I had to get a newspaper job, at the age of 11, so I could buy my own fishing poles because I wanted to go fishing. So if my father is watching this, I just wanted to remind you of how hard of a worker I was, as a child. But, most people do ask, but in all seriousness, most people do ask, how long should a resume be, right? So when you're applying for a job, is it 1 pages, no more than 5, or is it 1 page? Is it 1 page or no more than 5 pages? How long should a resume be?
I mean, I've personally never written one longer than 2 pages, and that's even for my most senior level clients. Anything that's earlier than within the last 10 years, so anything pre-2010, for example, I stick in like an early career section, and it just has what their title was and the company. And if recruiters want to dig more into it in the interview, they can, because it's listed there, but I don't even include the dates at that point. I just think recruiters have so little time to go through these things anyway, like we talked about with the top third. I don't think you ever need more than 2 pages, but I'm welcome and open to other thoughts from people who are doing this all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good question. And there's so many people out there who ask themselves this question all the time. They started out doing one thing and they've done so many other things in their career. And they're wondering, well, how do I know, first of all, what to include on my resume? How do I know how far back the information should go? How long should it be? These are all questions that people ask, and they're really kind of confused and frustrated, and they come to us with, the same questions. And so a couple of things that I share with people that I found is that, number one, resume gets 6 seconds of attention. 6 seconds. So I would ask them, can you read through 10 pages in 6 seconds? So then we're not going to make your resume 10 pages. So that's number one. Also, in terms of, the experience, I would focus on the experience that's most relevant to the job that you're trying to go for. Okay. And I would structure it that way. And sometimes we have to get creative in how we structure it. But my goal with that particular client would be, let's make sure that the experience that speaks directly to that job is front and center. And we can put everything else in another section. But we're going to make sure that they see you as the person they need. That's it. And in terms of length, because I'm thinking 6 seconds, I usually don't go more than 2 pages. I'll be honest with you.
I agree with both. I typically don't go more than 2 pages. And I also do, some clients, they love their old experience to be on there. So I will list just the employer and the position. And I don't list the dates. I don't list any duties under there either. But I have done some military, some government resumes that are longer than 2 pages. I have.
Yes.
Definitely. And I also have a question about the resume in terms of the style or type to use, because we have the reverse chronological, we have the functional resume, we have the hybrid resume, we have the government USA jobs resume, as I call it, right? We have the CV. When do we use all of these things, right? How do I know when to use a CV versus when to use a hybrid one, or reverse chronological versus a functional one? Right? Like, how does that work?
That's a very, very good question.
Excuse me.
I think, and others have ideas. I use chronological, particularly when they're staying within the same general industry and function, because it can show progressive movement in your experience. But if you're trying to make maybe a lateral change into a new industry, functional resumes might be better because it's showing the transferable skills. But I think it really depends on the person and where they're trying to go with that resume.
Absolutely. I agree. It depends on the client and where they're going.
Yes. It's literally a case-by-case situation. That's why when you do have your clients, having those initial conversations to get an understanding of their career direction is very important.
So important.
And so we have a question from one of our viewers, Devin Rhodes. And so he asked, what are some of maybe the keywords or buzzwords that, you can use on your resume?
Oh, I love questions like this. It's so interesting. I actually created a whole resume and cover letter writing toolkit that includes a lot of these words because it's so important. I would advise anyone who's creating their resume to, instead of using words like responsible for, very, very passive language, you want to use words that show that you were above average. And like words like led, created, conceptualized, designed, show that you didn't just come to work, punch a clock, and go home. You want to show that you increased this, slashed this. You want to really have those strong words that show value and show leadership and show strong experience.
And to piggyback on that, I always remove worked with or assisted. Take that out of there. Just speak to what it is that you've done. Then you can have that conversation of how it played out. But on the resume, take out you worked with or you assisted someone doing something.
Right.
This is what you've done. So we're going to just say what you did.
Yeah, that's a good question, Devin. I get that a lot too. one other thing I'd add is to take out any adverbs, so any words ending in ly. So if you're saying you expertly managed a team, instead quantify that. How do you know that you were an expert in managing that team? Like, did you get a good performance review? Like, how can people substantiate that you expertly led something? So just watch out for adverbs, because employers will ask you, like, how do you know? And what does that mean?
Right.
Wow.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
That is, and so like, how about? So I heard, Gabrielle, you said like the word like value add. Like, do you use those type of these industry standard buzzwords now? Synergies, like what was one of those old words that people used to say all the time. Like, do you put those things in your resume?
No, I personally do not. I think you can tell whether or not someone gets an industry if you're using the right industry terms, right? So you can show value add by aligning it with what that particular industry wants to see without saying the word value add.
Right.
So I unless you can prove and you can quantify it, I don't say it's better to just do that and take out any of the kind of jargon that you're seeing.
And there are many different lists online that will help you to choose the right words per industry. About doing your research.
Great.
Wow.
So, Doug, we have any questions from the audience, or?
Well, we just had that one, and I'm watching as we go. Please ask your question. I know you had one earlier. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yes. You're so rude. But I want to talk about more the job market today, right? Because if you're a career coach or even a resume writer, you should know a little bit about the job market. But this is COVID-19. We're in some truly unprecedented times, and it's really impacting access to work and how many people are applying to jobs. So traditionally, I've seen 250 plus people apply to a job as a recruiter before. Now, I can't imagine. I'm not a recruiter anymore, but I can't imagine what that number looks like now. It's probably really scary from a recruiter standpoint. So how has the COVID-19 impacted the job market, employment opportunities, and, in terms of access to work? Because I think the opportunities are shrinking some. And so how do you coach your clients through all of those predicaments?
So I'll start, and I'll say there have been many jobs obviously eliminated for various reasons, particularly budget because of COVID. But there have also been jobs added, such as COVID temperature checker, or there's a lot of like COVID compliance officer. There's a lot of new jobs that have been added focusing on COVID and making sure that they are creating a safe space for those businesses that are open. So I would say, yes, there are a lot of jobs, that have been eliminated, but there are still jobs that we did not have, 8 months ago that have opened.
Yeah.
Good point,
That's
Jackie.
a great
Good point.
And also what's happening that a lot of employers, if they are still hiring, they're now more open to remote work.
Yes.
So once where we were kind of relegated to our immediate, geolocation, now you can work for a company that's based on the other side of the country if you like, because you can work from home now. It's kind of opened up another lane of opportunity for some other people.
And I think a lot of employers are actually seeing like, hey, we really don't need an office. People can
work to your benefit.
Right. People can work from home.
There are benefits on both sides there.
The only thing that I would say about working remotely out of your state, you just have to be cautious for the company's payroll, because they do have to pay for each state that they have employees. So some of them, if their budget isn't large, then they're not going to be able to. So you'll see, usually those companies will put on the job posting, must reside in New Jersey.
Yeah, I do see that sometimes too.
Yeah, from a larger kind of big scale perspective, working at Wharton at the business school, even, we see our students currently being hit as they're trying to apply for new positions. And the ones that I think are unsurprisingly affected were, travel and hospitality, retail, if they only have brick and mortar shops, if they don't have an online outlet. And even oil and gas industries have been hit particularly hard. But like Jacqueline was saying, there are really resilient industries. And so far I've seen that, when it makes sense, primarily in healthcare and pharma, especially pharma with the pandemic that we're in. Renewable energy, people moving more into those spaces, solar. Tech and fintech and any sort of financial services have all been very resilient. So if you're looking to make some sort of industry change, those seem to be going strong. If you're part of the original group and you've already faced a layoff, now is a good time to speak with resume writers or career coaches about how to pull out those transferable skills for these industries that are still doing well despite everything going on.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, if I may, I have another question. I think this is going to hit directly to the core of what we're doing and maybe to the listeners out there. What's the one mistake that people are making on their resumes time and time again? When you look at it like, man, I keep seeing this everywhere. Like, why are people making this same mistake? What would that be? And how can people not make that mistake in the future?
I get that question a lot. And I think it's so easy to think about, grammatical errors or spelling errors and kind of mention those things. But honestly, remember the purpose of a resume is to sell yourself to a potential employer, right? So the biggest mistake you can make on a resume is failing to do that effectively. If you're sending out resume after resume, but you're not highlighting your strongest skills or your transferable skills, then that's worse than missing a comma somewhere.
I agree with that. I would say for me, because I'm writing resumes and I'm also reviewing resumes at the same time right now. So reading a resume and looking at it and saying, I feel like I just read this. There's nothing that is custom to you as an individual. So I'm certainly going to bypass that because I feel like that is exactly what I just read representing someone else. So it's not tailored to you at all. So that's the biggest mistake.
Yeah. And another one I see all the time is people just listing their responsibilities and not their impact. So that's it. I guess while you're in the position, are you thinking through during your performance reviews what difference you're making in this role? Have your bosses been telling you or giving you a pat on the back for any projects that you've been doing? That's quantifiable impact, and that's what needs to be conveyed. Not just that you managed a project, but that you reduced the amount of steps in between. You streamlined something, or you made something more efficient. Like that's what needs to be conveyed, not just that you were assigned tasks.
Right.
That's powerful. Powerful. And so we have a question from one of our viewers. So we have a couple questions from some of our viewers. This question is from Evelyn. Is putting references available on a request on a resume? Is putting references available on request on a resume still necessary, or do the employers just understand that if they need to check your references, they'll
No, unnecessary. And it takes up valuable space on your resume. And here's the thing, if you've been working, if you're a professional, you've got 5, 10, 15, 20 years of experience, it's kind of a no-brainer that you have some references that you can share if we request them. So no need to put that. Use that space for something, that's going to really help you get the job.
Yes. Now, if you don't have that many years of experience, then I think it's appropriate, because you don't need all of that space, because you don't have, so many different jobs and, volunteer opportunities that you may have had. So if you are more green in the industry or in your career, then, it's good to show that you do have references even that early on.
Okay. And so Devin asked, what is the worst thing you can put on a resume? And I would like to, if I can, I just want to chime in. If your email says, I'm on the block 609, at hotmail.com, that's a problem.
That is a problem.
Yes.
And before you get into it, right, I want to share a funny story. I'm telling you, this client that I work with, obviously I would not say his name. He actually put on his resume his employer's resume, his resume from his email from his employers. So I'm like, why would you put your email from the current company that you're working for?
Wow,
like it wasn't even it wasn't even an inappropriate email, but in a different way of inappropriateness. So it was just interesting. But he actually was using that before he met me to send out his resume to other people, submit his. I don't know. I've never seen that before in my life, but we can go ahead and address the question.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think Duncan made an excellent point. I think, an unprofessional email address, it's usually the first thing that I think someone in our position sees and tells a client, you need to change this immediately. I have gone so far as to create professional email addresses for my clients. Say, here, listen, here's your password, change it. From now on, when you apply to a job, you use this. To really help them understand the difference in how you're perceived. So that's probably that's actually good answer to that question, Duncan.
I try,
Definitely.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Definitely.
No, go ahead, Jay.
Now, I was just gonna say, sometimes my clients, they have busy inboxes. They're like, oh, I don't want to have my, this email on here because I get so many emails from, things. So I said, let's make a new one.
Yeah.
Straight for, career opportunities, so you can filter everything there. So you know exactly what you're getting with this email address. Because I understand that you have inboxes that are compromised by different things. And, you have different, good emails and also some solicitation emails. So I understand creating an email just for jobs could really help people just filter out and make sure they don't miss out on anything. So.
And this kind of coincides with that, with your LinkedIn profile. If you're going to have it on your resume, make it custom to your name as well, so that it's memorable.
Like your LinkedIn URL, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
Customize your URL so it's your name and it's easy to find you.
Yes.
Because your LinkedIn profile, believe it or not, it is searchable through Google.
Yes.
People can find you.
Right.
You have that.
Good point.
Absolutely.
All right.
And
do we have any other questions?
No, that's it for now. Did you have? I know you had something as well. I thought you had a question. I'm sorry.
I always have a question. So this is similar to the resume, but this is like the resume's cousin, right? So the cover letter. In 2020, is the cover letter still needed? Yes or no? And why?
Honestly, I would say more senior positions, yes. They like to keep that tradition of a cover letter because it does show how you write. I would say more junior positions. I feel that if you have a LinkedIn profile, that along with an updated resume, that's sufficient.
Yeah, I think there's a few instances where, like Jacqueline was saying, it's really needed. So in addition to a senior level role, I think if you're trying to break into a role where if they just looked on your resume, they wouldn't think you're qualified, a cover letter is really important to tell your story and to explain why you're trying to transition into this role where it seems like you wouldn't be a good fit. You can also use a cover letter to leverage any connections you have, right? So in that first paragraph, you could say, I heard about this from your colleague X, who, I've been connecting with. And then there's a name drop that you can leverage in a cover letter. And particularly it's useful if you're just going through an ATS system with your resume. It just gives you a little bit more opportunity to sell yourself. I don't think it's as necessary if you already have relationships with the people that you're applying with. But try to take as many opportunities as you can, especially if it's like a cold call sort of resume,
Yeah, I think that those are all great points. And you mentioned it a second ago, Jay, you said we're in 2020. So right now what's happening is COVID. Entire industries are suffering and people are having to figure out how to appeal to new audiences where they don't have any existing connections and they don't have, reputation, and they have to build that from scratch now. So having a cover letter allows you the opportunity to do that because your resume can only have but so much information and it's really concise and compact. The cover letter gives you more to work with and it gives you more opportunity to market yourself.
All right. And I guess maybe I guess maybe boils down to if the employer is asking for it.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Also can help.
Yes, definitely do it.
So let me actually ask that question. So let's just say no matter what position you're applying for, should you always include a cover letter?
I'm going to tell you from an employer's perspective, it's not always read.
Yeah.
Good point.
And I'm being honest. So
I recommend you have it ready.
As Pamela said, it can't hurt.
Right.
can't hurt. No.
But
I agree with that one.
And the last thing you want is to be in a situation, like you said, Jay, where they request it and then you don't have it.
right.
You want to be ready.
Always
Stay ready, right? Yeah.
What you can kind of supplement, right? So like, let's say the employer isn't requiring it, because that's a big distinction too. Like, is there a little asterisk next to cover letter, meaning like you should probably submit that?
Right.
But if it's not required, send a follow-up email, and just express your interest via email. Make sure that they receive your resume. Do something to just show that kind of thirst for that position. If you really are just like that, not interested in submitting a cover letter, I think that's a nice low lift thing you can do to show your interest.
That's a good idea too.
Yeah. Right. And so something I think about a lot too, because of the COVID, I think about 2008 with the financial crisis, and there's a lot of gaps in employment in people's resumes. So how do we address those in the resume artfully, cleverly, right? Without making it too negative? How can we turn negative into a positive experience on a resume?
Well, it depends on. I'll jump in. I'll go first. For me, again, no two clients are the same. It really depends on why that gap was there, how long the gap is. If the gap was only a few months, then it's not going to be a huge deal. However, if you have like a 2 to 5 year gap, then that might warrant some explanation. You might want to say, well, I went back to school, or I decided to take some time and focus on my family, or there are ways that you can explain that. And because even if you've been just kind of looking for the right position, that's usually, it might not take a year or 2 years or 5 years. So I would say tell the truth, explain it very professionally as to why that gap is there. But if it's less than a year, then I wouldn't put so much energy into why you have to explain that.
I've seen something very creative. A stay-at-home mom for years trying to get back in the workforce, and she put domestic homemaker.
I've seen that.
And I thought that was very creative, because if it is 7 years that she was home, if she didn't put anything, then that's a major red flag. So I thought that was a unique way of explaining what she was doing at that time. So think outside of the box.
It's funny. I was going to share a very similar story. Earlier, our question was like egregious things we see on the resumes. And aside from the email, sometimes it's just not saying anything at all about this break. And I similarly had a mom who'd been away for like 5 years. She had 2 kids in that time. And she's like, I don't know what I learned. And by the end of the process, I was like, well, what are some things that you do for the household? And she's like, well, I do all the accounting. I'm like, great. You have a personal accountant. That's huge.
There you go.
Like conflict management. You got this. There's ways to spin this into skills that you've gained that might not seem typical, but they're still skills. Like that mom would still walk into an office and know how to like correctly handle a conflict because of these sort of skills that she's learned. So there's always something you can take away as a strength.
And you know what, too, like, when I talk to the clients, I dig into, okay, you have a gap in employment. So the first question is, okay, what was the reason? Second question is, did you volunteer?
Exactly.
Did you do any freelance gigs? Did you do some projects? Do you have a YouTube channel? Did you teach someone? Did you take a course, training? So there's other things that you could do to supplement that time away to show that you've been staying in the game, that you're still on top of trends, that you've been doing your own independent work that can translate into what they're doing for the job description, or what they're asking for the job description. So that's also a key component as well. Pro tip, that's also good for high school students too. You say, okay, I don't have any work experience really, or I may have one job. Okay, what have you been doing outside of that? Have you volunteered for any organizations and clubs? Are you the captain of the basketball team? Do you have a YouTube channel? Do you have a freelance gig? So a lot of younger kids are getting into IT and doing some IT things. So that's another way to show. You don't have to get paid money to show your experience, right? You don't have to get paid a wage to do that. There's other ways you can accentuate that on a resume.
That's an excellent point. It's usually something that I use a lot with, with new grads, people who are younger in their careers, as you said. I'll ask them, well, what did you do on campus? What kind of extracurricular activities did you have? Are you active even in your house of worship? And they go, oh, yes, I do this and I do that and I do this. And the list suddenly gets very, very long. Now you have to make room for it all.
Right.
But even so, when you make that list, because I do the same, now you can pull those transferable skills.
Yes.
What they did on campus. And again, things that they don't think of, and that's our job to think for them.
Right. Correct.
And so, Justin, if I can, just got a couple more questions. We have some questions from our listeners as well, and I want to be respectful of the time.
Of course.
And so, one of our listeners asked, is it if you apply for a job, is it your responsibility to bring resumes to the interview, or should the employer already have your resume there?
No, it's your responsibility. Remember, be ready.
Right.
Have it. Even if you don't ask for it, you have it. Think a step ahead. That goes for the interview. It goes for even after you've gotten the job.
Multiple copies.
Yes. Because you never know. You might get an interview and they might say, oh, I've had this happen where you're in an interview and they say, oh my gosh, I want you to meet with somebody else. Can you give me an extra half hour? And they bring somebody else into the room. Well, that person doesn't have a copy of your resume. What are you going to do about that?
Exactly.
And how you respond to those situations, it tells someone how you're going to resist on the job.
Right.
Indeed. And one thing I would say too is 2020, bring your iPad, show people your work, right? Show some samples, show some projects you've been working on. It's not just a resume you have to show. I like to speak less in the interview instead of speaking a lot. I'll show my work. This is why I did it. This is what I did. Here's my process. Actually, you can look at it if you want to, and I make jokes about if you want more information, you have to pay me a little bit more to give you that, to help your company out, so, be fun with it. Right. But show more than your resume, show your work, be confident about your work, stand by it. I think that's important too.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. All right. So I guess Duncan has another question. He may have some visitors over there, but one thing I guess for me is when you're looking at remote jobs, because that's a big thing now, right? Remote jobs. Where do you find these remote jobs? Because sometimes people say, I don't know where to go for this. Is there a website for it? Or do I have to go look on Indeed? Is there a way to search for remote jobs on these platforms? What do you think?
You can absolutely search remote on Indeed, and that's all they'll give you. And you can even specify it, remote HR, remote accounting. It will give you those options.
Yep, absolutely. And in addition to Indeed, the beautiful thing about it is that remote work has become so common. You can find it everywhere.
Right.
Indeed, you can even go to LinkedIn and literally there's an option that says remote.
Yes.
And you can only see jobs that give you that option. You can go to Google. Google has a job board. You can use that and search for remote jobs. So you can search for remote jobs in all of the same places that you would search for your non-remote, your office-based jobs.
And there are Facebook groups as well that have remote jobs. They only post remote jobs. So
yeah. And for the listeners out there, you can actually go to www.mercercountyworks.com. We have a job board too for the state of New Jersey, so you can check out remote jobs on there as well. Shameless plug, I know.
Yes, the number one job engine, yes, in New Jersey, right down there at the bottom, www.mercercountyworks.com. So I just have one more question from one of our listeners. And then we definitely want to close this out to be respectful of time. So, and I think this is a very important question when we talk about, bias. So, Brielle asks, how important is a name on a resume, right? So, could your name actually, get you disqualified from a job?
I have heard people say, I can't pronounce this name, so they bypass the resume. I know a lot of people that are not from the United States, if their name is lengthy, they have an American name on their resume. And, then when they present, if they're offered the position, they present their ID, it will show their full name. So I don't think that it's fair that people have to do that. But unfortunately, people do skip over that because maybe they're not comfortable with saying it.
Right.
It's funny. I was hearing you ask the question, Duncan, and I thought, oh, now we're really getting into an HR topic because but there are some people who will do it because they want to be more likable.
Mhm.
Their name is Jacqueline. They may say, oh, call me Jackie. They'll put Jackie on a resume. Or their name is Andrea. They'll say, oh, call me Andy. It's their way of trying to just kind of be more friendly and approachable. So sometimes that's the idea behind it. And that's not so bad. But, to your point, Jacqueline, if somebody is, we'll say, call it what it is, discriminating against someone because of their name, then that's just wrong.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, that is the case sometimes. I've witnessed it as well. Something else you could do if you have a nickname, like Pamela was saying, maybe you just do the initial of your first name and then in quotations your nickname. So you could say like G or Gabby Thomas, and that way, it's clear that that's your preferred name.
Right.
It's just another option that you could use if you were worried about that.
Right. It should be your choice. It shouldn't be as a result of fear.
Right.
I agree.
Being counted out just because of your name.
I agree.
Especially in 2020.
Right.
Right. So, Pamela, I want to start with you. What is the one major takeaway for the audience today?
Oh my goodness. One. That's my personal challenge today, to pick one. You know what? If I was going to give the audience one takeaway, it would be to remember that your resume is there to market you. So let go of the imposter syndrome. Let go of any negative ideas of you thinking that your value is not important. Everything that you've done is valuable. All the work that you've put into your career, all the incredible things that you've done for your employers is important. And when you're putting your resume together, do not sell yourself short. Okay.
Nice. And where can our listeners find you and follow you?
Awesome. So I'm the founder and CEO of the Offer Stage Consulting. So you can find me on all the major social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also find me directly through my website at theofferstage.com.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I appreciate that. And so, Gabrielle, what is the one major takeaway for the audience today?
Sure. Yeah. And I think I mentioned it earlier. The one thing you can really do, especially if you're applying to positions that aren't all the same, is to really use that top third. Like we said, that prime real estate, don't be afraid to change it up before you send that application so that it aligns really closely to your job description. Even if, like Pamela was saying, even if you've got imposter syndrome about what you're putting down, you still should really adjust that top third when you can.
Wonderful. And where can our listeners find and follow you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn and then also on my website, which is resume-your-lives.com.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, Jacqueline. And so what is the one major takeaway for our audience today?
I would say the one major takeaway is if you're not confident or if you are confused as to how you can elevate yourself professionally, invest and help. Make sure you make that investment because competition is extremely large. So make sure you invest in yourself so you can get ahead of your competition.
Wonderful, wonderful. And where can our listeners find and follow you?
I am the founder and CEO of JW Warren LLC. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, JW Warren LLC, and my Instagram is JW_Warren LLC. And my website, jw-warrenllc.com.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I want to be the first to say this was an awesome show. Although I'm not applying anywhere, I'm going to go look at my resume, right now and do some things too. Because I'm pumped. I'm excited. I know I'm going to get some phone calls with individuals saying, "Hey, Doug, who were those people on the show? Could you put me in contact?" So I just want to say thank you, Brother Tyler. Do you have anything?
Just appreciate y'all, for lending your time and giving something for the listeners to really think about. And we're getting people to work. That our hashtag is get this work. We want people to go to work. We want people to, not feel underemployed. They want to feel like they deserve this, that this is the job that's meant for them. And so I think all these tips will help the listeners. And thank you for the listeners for tuning in and for your beautiful questions today.
That's right. Well, please join us next time. We hope to have you all back on the show again. Thank you once again. We're out. Peace.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Peace.
Thanks.